In a typical city where people have cars, jobs, homes, and families, no one has learned to lie. Everyone is telling the truth, but sometimes it's hard, especially for chubby loser Mark Bellison, who just gets off the elevator and walks down the hall looking for something. Mark eventually knocks on the door and a beautiful woman named Anna opens it, surprised to see him so early. He awkwardly introduces himself, but Anna only expresses indifference and disappointment, especially with his appearance. Anna still needs to get ready, so she leads Mark to her own apartment. While waiting in the living room, Mark shows his discomfort early on and worries that the restaurant he's about to eat at isn't priced well enough for Anna, but that's all he cares about. The poor man in his 40s is still cash-strapped and could even get fired this week. Moments later, Anna falls to the ground and they decide to leave. At a restaurant, two people sit at a table and order drinks. Mark said he would like to meet Anna. And Anna boasts that she works as a manager, earns a lot of money, is beautiful and successful. She looks happy, but sometimes she lies in bed, eats, and even cries. However, the conversation is interrupted when a waiter comes over with drinks and asks for orders. During the date, Anna's mother calls to check on how they are doing. Anna explained Mark to her mother. She said she was unattractive, didn't earn much, was chubby and a little short-nosed. She assured her that she wouldn't sleep with Mark and probably wouldn't even kiss him. After dinner, they went back to Anna's apartment. Mark thanks Anna for agreeing to date as a courtesy to his friend Greg. He eventually accepts that her girlfriend is out of her level and that he will probably never see her again. However, a drunk Anna admits she enjoyed the date, and promises to clarify her true feelings for Mark when she sobers up. Before parting, she kisses Mark on the cheek, making Mark very happy. Back home, Mark fell asleep while watching an honest Coca-Cola commercial. The next day, Mark met his neighbor Frank in the elevator. Chubby and losers, they express their unhappiness and dissatisfaction with their lives. Before they part, Mark greets Frank with his usual "see you tomorrow," but he honestly replies that Frank is going to commit suicide and that he must be alive. When Mark goes to work, he witnesses a homeless man, a strange preacher, an arguing couple, and a woman who suddenly talks to him. At the lecture films building, Mark's colleague was giving some visitors a quick tour of the building when Mark walked in and was introduced as one of the company's least successful screenwriters, and was told that day I was introduced that I might be fired in the middle of the day. Before Mark walks into the office, he approaches his secretary Sherry, who hates him. She then tells Mark that his boss Anthony is going to fire him later and everyone seems to know about it. Sitting in his office, Mark sees Anthony walking around and hesitantly enters the room after a call from Mark. While everyone is talking, Anthony ends up firing Mark for writing a bad Black Plague script. To compound the pain and embarrassment, Mark receives a rejection email from Anna. It was also received by his work colleagues. Finally, Brad Kessler, the company's respected screenwriter, approached Mark for the third time, ostensibly to bid him farewell, but instead insulted and mocked him. Mark then goes to the nursing home to see his mother, Martha Bellison. As he walked down the corridor, he was greeted by three old men who were also talking strange things. Entering his mother's room, he helped her tune the TV to the proper channel, then recounted his own life setbacks. The next morning, Mark knocks on the door and the landlord demands $800. However, Mark's bank account had him only $300 left, so the landlord evicted him from the apartment. He then goes to the bank, withdraws all the money and closes the account. Unfortunately, due to the system being down, the banker was unable to close the bank, but allowed the payment. The banker can't check his account, so he asks what the balance is. At that moment, Mark invents the universe's first lie, claiming that he still has $800 left. After his deception, however, the system is restored and the banker's account now sees him with $300 instead of $800. However, not everyone there knew how to lie, so the banker thought it was a glitch in the system and immediately handed Mark $800. Mark is dazed as he leaves the bank and talks to his landlord about paying the rent. Back at his apartment, he cries of joy and relief at how easy it is to lie. He later meets with Greg at a bar and admits that he said something untrue. To help Greg understand, Mark calls Jim, the bartender, to teach him how lies work. But after a few tries, they came to believe everything he said. Using the power of his newfound abilities, Mark asks the two men for ideas on what needs to be done to get things going his way. Greg and Jim suggest finding a girl, so Mark follows suit. Although Mark manages to bring a beautiful woman into the motel, he refuses to carry out his original plan and leaves her alone in the room. Mark returns to the bar in disappointment, after which the guys start brainstorming again. Suddenly thinking of getting the money, Mark gets into a car with a drunken friend, only to find the cops chasing him. Police officers do not hesitate to arrest Greg for DUI and drag him out of the car, but he is quickly released when Mark lies again and says Greg is not drunk. Mark manages to escape arrest and takes him behind the wheel to a casino where he plays a few games. After gambling, cheating, and telling several lies, Mark takes Greg out with a bucket of gold. The next morning, Mark reunites with Frank in the elevator. He finds out that Frank is looking for a way to end his life and he intends to try it tonight. Mark then lies to his cause and convinces Frank not to end his own life by saying that everything will be fine. Before saying goodbye, Mark also promises to meet Frank later that night. Mark shows the same kindness to people he meets on his regular commute. He gives a homeless man money, speaks to a woman standing outside the lecture films building, settles a quarreling marital dispute, comforts an old man in a nursing home, and promises to spend time with Frank. Fulfill. That night, Mark goes to his room and calls Anna to ask her out on another date. He promised that this time would be different and Anna happily agreed that she would meet him the next day. After the call, he watches a show produced by Lecture Films. Having a great idea, he gets up and starts writing his own script. He was so motivated that the next morning he confidently entered the lecture film building and entered Anthony's office. Despite Anthony's protests, he begins presenting his new Black Death script, and after reading a few sentences, Anthony picks up the phone and sends everyone to the office to listen to Mark. I call. When Mark finishes reading the script, everyone is satisfied and Mark gets his job back at the company. Mark and Anna's second date ends up in a nice restaurant. Anna congratulates his script and is interested in his personal life. Mark says he's unlucky to have his father, an alcoholic and in prison for robbery, but he's blessed with a wonderful mother. He also tells Anna that he will pick up her mother from her nursing home and let her spend the rest of her days in luxury. With Mark's success and wealth, he hopes to eventually become romantically involved with Anna. However, although Anna thinks that Mark's personality makes her a suitable husband, she holds back because of Mark's genes. A phone call interrupts their conversation and Mark rushes to the hospital to see his mother. Unfortunately, Mark soon receives word that his mother is in poor health, and doctors predict that Martha will suffer a severe heart attack and a fatal heart attack later that night. Told him, Mark becomes increasingly concerned when his mother starts crying and talks about her fear of death. At the end of his mother's life, Mark comforts his mother by lying that she will be happy forever after her death. He doesn't realize that doctors and nurses are also listening and encouraging him to talk more. After his mother's death, a devastated Mark leaves the room and walks past Anna, who is waiting for him in the hallway. Anna followed him and drove back to her seat in her car, where she sat in silence. She said Anna held his hand grieving and she woke up the next day to find them next to each other on the couch. When Mark drives home that morning, he is surprised to see a large crowd in front of his apartment. As he moved through the crowd, a hospital nurse pointed at him and everyone started asking questions about what happens when people die. Upon arriving at the apartment, Anna calls and asks about reports that she knows what happens when people die. After some time, Anna went to Mark's apartment. When she asked Mark what had happened, he explained that Mark had told him that there would be eternal joy after death, to ease his fear of his mother's death. Anna is also satisfied with what Mark has just said and convinces him to write down what he knows. A while later she comes over with pizza for Greg to stay with her friends. Everyone in the world is waiting for Mark to reveal what happens after a person dies. When morning comes, Mark writes down everything he knows. He thought of something special to stick the paper on and used the pizza box Greg had brought the night before. Soon he will go see them all and give them the news they have been waiting for. Mark reveals that there is a man in the sky who controls everything. And when people die, they don't disappear into nothingness, they go to wonderful places. He also added that everyone will have a villa at this location and all their loved ones will be there. At the same time, there are free ice creams with different flavors during the day and night. Finally, Mark says that if a person does 3 bad things, when he dies, he will go to a terrible place instead. People started asking what badness was, and after 2 hours of discussion, Mark revealed that badness was intentional and physical harm to others. And the next revelation says that it is those in heaven who will decide who will or will not go to the great place, and who will live or die. People complain that people in heaven are bad because they do bad things to them, but Mark replies that people in heaven can do good things to them. This leads to the final revelation that even if the Celestial One did bad things to people, he would make up for it by giving goodness forever after their death. Of course, that only happens if they aren't doing any of the bad things they mentioned. A girl from the crowd then concludes that this is some kind of test. Also, to satisfy everyone's curiosity as to how he knows these things, Mark reveals to people that the man in heaven told him all about it. In the days that followed, headlines and front pages of various newspapers, magazines, tabloids and research publications focused on Mark's revelations. Thanks to this, Mark's career is accelerating. He became popular, bought his own mansion, spent a lot of time with Anna, and wrote a hit script for the Black Death. One day, while Mark and Anna were sitting on a park bench, Mark asked Anna what she thought of the people in the park. She begins calling them losers, sweaty, geeks, etc., and makes negative comments about their appearance. So Mark convinces her to see people beyond their appearance. Anna asked Mark to tell her what she thought of him, and he complimented her on her looks. But beyond that, he sees her as a kind, caring, wonderful woman. When it's Anna's turn, she starts off with her pot-bellied remarks, but she also showers him with positive compliments. Anna said Mark is smart, kind, funny, and most of all he makes her happy. Enthusiastic, the two slowly try to bring their faces closer together, but Anna holds back again, pondering Mark's bad genetics. The next day, she hears radio commentators teasing Mark in her car as a fat loser who listens to men on the air. At the same time, Mark is directing his assistant to write the next screenplay at his home. When his assistant leaves, Anna visits Mark's house and gives him a birthday card, telling him that she cannot watch the movie with him because she has a date with Brad Kessler. Their conversation soon leads to Anna sleeping with Brad, and with Mark's strong reluctance, Mark makes a rule that no woman should sleep with anyone unless they are married. Brad soon arrives at Mark's house to pick up Anna and immediately heads to her date's place. At the restaurant, Anna notices how narcissistic and controlling Brad is and even decides to order for her Anna. In the middle of the date, Anna's mother calls again to check on them. Brad asks if he can speak to her on her behalf, but Brad ends up only insulting her mother, leaving Anna hurt. During the rest of the dinner, Brad casually insults Mark, talking about how genetically compatible they are. The next morning, Mark took his usual route to work, only to find that nothing had changed. To make matters worse, people now only care about getting their own mansions when they die. Others still look up to the famous Mark Bellison. Anna is watching Mark's interview on TV while at her mother's house. She quickly realizes that she loves Mark, and although she somehow thinks she wants to be with him, her mother is adamantly opposed and insists that Brad's number not be accepted. Dialed and she forced Anna to talk to him. Meanwhile, Mark visits his mother's grave to convey his grief. The seasons have changed and Mark and Anna have never spoken. But one day, Anna visits Mark's house to hand over an invitation to her wedding, which will take place the next day. Mark pleads with Anna not to marry Brad, but Anna says she has little time to find her ideal genetic partner. After an emotional confrontation, Anna goes to the park and as she sits on a bench she realizes that the children are making fun of the chubby boy. Anna intervenes and comforts the boy. The next day, Mark decides to get out of bed and catches a terrifying glimpse of himself in the bathroom mirror. When he returns to his bedroom, he sees Greg already dressed up for the wedding. He also saw a tuxedo lying on the bed and Greg handed him a razor to finally apply his makeup. The two then come to the church to attend Anna's wedding. Eventually Anna starts walking down the aisle and Brad waits for Anna at the altar. The ceremony proceeds quickly, and when the wedding director asks if there is anyone else he thinks would be a better match for Anna or Brad, the room goes silent until Mark speaks up. Despite criticism from others and ridicule from Brad, Mark stands in the midst of these people, confessing her love to Anna and challenging the notion of marrying someone with superior genes. This time Mark wants Anna to make up her own mind and do what she wants, but instead people start asking what heavenly man wants from Anna. Unwilling to lie again, Mark leaves the church depressed. Anna follows him to ask what the heavenly man wants. And Mark admits that there are no humans in the sky. He only made amends to comfort his dying mother, but things escalated. Anna is still baffled how Mark invented this, but it doesn't matter because she's convinced she wants a small, fat, short-nosed kid now. Finally, the two break free of their inhibitions and smile broadly at each other. Years later, a pregnant Anna feeds her husband and son, who are already at the dining table. They compliment her on her cooking skills regardless of how it tastes or looks, which makes Anna happy. Mark and her son celebrate with a meaningful high five as Anna goes to the kitchen for bread. Apparently the boy inherited the ability to lie. Then they eat and live happily ever after. End. Conclusion. In the end, Mark's journey led him to discover the power of honesty and genuine connection, which ultimately helped him find true happiness and love with Anna, despite societal expectations and genetic prejudices. Through their shared commitment to being authentic and accepting each other as they are, Mark and Anna build a loving family, breaking free from the constraints of lies and embracing the beauty of truth in their lives.